Words like offended, fearful, and threatened were used by Isiah Washington, a young African-American man who discovered a white sheet resembling a KKK glory suit hanging above his workstation at the Sierra Aluminum Company in Riverside, California. I'm Michael Reel, and this is ReelUrbanNews.com. We speak with Mr. Washington and his attorney, Lisa Bloom, regarding their complaint, filing a racial and wrongful termination suit against the Sierra Aluminum Company. Mr. Washington, what was life like for you at the Sierra Aluminum Company in Riverside, California, just as a regular employee? What was the work environment like?
They worked me real hard, try to work me at a pace, try to make me give up, but I wouldn't give up. And I'm very athletic. I eventually got very quick, and I felt like they moved me around a lot to try to challenge me, but I didn't give up, and I got good at my job.
So you were a quick study. You were able to adapt and learn what they were challenging you with quickly.
Yes, well, we was working with sheet metal, and my arm was all scratched up from when I first started because they were moving so fast at a pace to where I didn't even know what I was doing, and they were doing it intentionally. And I have scrapes and things on my arm. I went with an attitude as though, if you treat people with respect, they'll treat you with respect. So that's how I walked into Sierra Aluminum, and I kept that. I just kept trying to show respect and not try to show no disrespect, because I was one of the only African Americans in there when I did start.
So Sierra was a mid-sized company with predominantly Hispanic and Caucasian employees?
Yes.
And it was just a few blacks?
Actually, me and one other guy, he was black. We started at the same time. We was the only ones. And it was overnight, so there was nobody else there.
I think it's a real concern when a company with several hundred employees, that's a factory, has such a tiny, tiny number of African American employees, really disproportionate to African American representation in the population.
Mr. Washington, it was in April of 2015 that you discovered a white-looking sheet hanging above your workstation at the Sierra Aluminum Company. Take us back to that.
From what I remember is we moved across the street to do some work, and I was moved into a workstation. I started working with my partner, and I look up and I see the white sheet hanging over the top of my workstation. I told my partner, look at this, look. And then I just stopped working, and I asked for them to take it down. And the supervisor, Lupe, said, why? And I remember a couple of people came around, and they were like giggling, and like everything just moved into like slow motion. And then he called his nephew, which was a forklift operator, and I heard puto, and he told me to get back to work. And we came back from break. guess it was taken down. And when we came back from break, he kind of like took over my workstation. Started like he butted over and tried to take my spot and like do my work like I wasn't doing my job. And he moved me and my partner on the other side of the warehouse where nobody was working at, but like by herself.
Well, let's be clear what a white sheet with 2 eye holes cut out of it hanging over the workstation of an African American means. It's a very clear symbol of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, which is one of the most violent terrorist organizations in United States history that specifically terrorized African Americans, even murdered African Americans throughout our history. So it's not just a symbol of overt racism. It's designed to instill fear. And as you can see from Isiah Washington, even sitting here today, it did instill fear. And it would in any reasonable person.
You know, we're looking at the photograph of this white sheet hanging. This took a concerted effort. This was not just something somebody tossed up in the air. This was, would you say, Mr. Washington, orchestrated?
Yes.
This was planned.
I still, you know, it was a threat, you know. And I still, to today, I still, you know, I don't feel comfortable anywhere. I can't even go to the store or nothing. I don't feel comfortable.
And that's the fear he's feeling.
That's the fear, and it's heartbreaking, and it's very real. You know, this is not a case that's just about an offhanded remark or a joke or a comment. This is about a terrorist act committed based on race.
Counselor, in your 30 years of handling civil rights cases, have you ever heard of anything so challenging as this case with the Sierra Aluminum Company and Isiah Washington?
You know, in Los Angeles, in the 21st century, you don't expect to be talking about the KKK.
Sure.
And, you know, not only did Mr. Washington have to endure this and have to work under a KKK sheet hanging over his workstation, but, and I assume you're going to get to this, he complained about it, and then shortly after that, he lost his job. So there's a lot of legal violations here. We're alleging not only racial discrimination, but retaliation, because let's be clear, everyone in the United States has the right to a workplace that's free of racial harassment and race discrimination, and has the right to complain about it. And what's supposed to happen is there's supposed to be a prompt, thorough investigation of that complaint. You punish the perpetrator and you protect the victim. Here, Mr. Washington. And unfortunately, Mr. Washington alleges none of that happened.
You had another incident where you injured your thumb. You were told to seek medical treatment. Talk about that.
I go home that day, and the next day I come in. I remember somebody asking me why I was at the medical station, and I told them, and they said, well, you're fine if you could work. And they said, but if you have to go home, I have to send you to the doctors. I said, no, I'm okay, I could work. I said, I showed up to work, I went home, and they said, okay. So they came back maybe 2 or 3 hours later, and they said, hey, you need to go. They pulled me into the office and said, you need to go to the doctors. I said, that's fine. Then he said I was supposed to ride with somebody that I didn't know. And that's why I had the problem, because I drove myself to work every day. And I told him that we could carpool. I can go behind you, or you could follow me, or I could follow you. But I didn't feel comfortable riding in somebody that I didn't know, their car, their vehicle, and because they didn't have a company vehicle. So I didn't feel comfortable. I did not refuse not to go. I told them I would go. I'll follow them, or they could follow me.
But they wanted you to get into someone's personal vehicle.
Personal vehicle. I said I didn't feel comfortable. I felt threatened with what had happened, and I went to the doctors. They refused. They told me to clock out. I clocked out, and I went to the doctors myself, and the doctor just looked at my thumb, and he gave me a clearance to go back to work the same day. He said it wasn't bad. He said I can go back to work the same day. The shift was over. I came back to work the next morning, and that's when they brought me into an office and said that I had been terminated for not following company policy. But I feel as though I didn't do anything wrong, because I told them that I was not refusing to go. I followed them, they followed whatever. I just wasn't hopping in somebody's personal vehicle.
Were you stunned that you were fired?
Yes, I was, because I brought the medical sheet back the next day, and they just said, "We're fired." I said, "Okay."
Why do you think the employees, the supervisors at Sierra Aluminum, were so tough on you, disturbing you in your workstation, hanging the sheet, kind of taunting you, using language that was derogatory toward you?
Because I was a good worker, and I was hard to get rid of. You know, I was quick, I was smart, and I was fast.
You know, there's another factor here that's fairly obvious, and that's racism.
Sure.
And, when you have a white sheet hanging over the workstation, you have to talk about the racism that's involved here. You can tell from just speaking to Mr. Washington for a few minutes, this is a man who treats everyone with respect and expects others to do the same toward him. And there's no more ultimate disrespect than racism. And unfortunately, I believe that he was targeted in large part for that reason. Or maybe it was a combination of what he's saying and race. We don't like to think about it, we don't like to talk about it, but unfortunately it's still very real.
And as you noted earlier, in the 21st century, on the West Coast, Southern California, this kind of action unfolds in the workplace.
Yeah, this is like Birmingham 1965 kind of thing. This is really a shocking case.
What has been Sierra's response to you all's complaint?
Well, they're fighting us. Well, we're in litigation. We have a trial date in the fall of 2017. We are vigorously representing Mr. Washington, and we're determined to see this case through and to fight for him all the way through trial, because we believe that he was wronged. So the next phase will be the depositions of the supervisors at Sierra Aluminum. They'll want to take Mr. Washington's deposition as well, and he'll sit for that and answer questions under oath like everybody else has to. So they're fighting it. Mr. Washington did complain after the white sheet was hung over his workstation.
Sure.
And as far as we know, there was never any real investigation done by the company. They never found out who did it because they didn't really look, as far as we know. And, Mr. Washington was just left to fend for himself. He was not protected. And that's shameful.
What do you want to get out of this? What do you want to walk away with after this enormous challenge? Yes, sir.
Me, I just want it to stop. You know what I mean? I want everybody to get along. Everybody, they gotta stop this, man. You know what I mean? Everybody deserves a job, not just because, everybody deserves a job. And you can't treat people differently.